Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on this new video on Remnant from the Ashes. Today I want to introduce you a melee build. As you can see, we're running everything that the game gives you pretty much at the beginning of the game, that it's focused on melee combat, on short range combat. And I have to admit it, like, this build surprised me. It's very viable. When I first put it together, I wasn't thinking that I could go toe to toe with some of the strongest bosses in the game, but apparently I can, and like quite easily, I have to say. Now this build is focused on melee play, but what makes it really strong is not the damage output, but the stagger potential of this build. Running this thing, you will be able to stun lock your enemies until they are dead, basically, and they won't be able to react because they are too busy taking damage in the face. But let's go, let's take a look at the build. Here we are in War 13, and this is the build. We are running the Scrapper armor set, which will give you the armor set bonus Challenger. That will increase all damage dealt to enemies within 5 meters from your character by 25% if you're running all of the 3 pieces. Plus, it will increase all of the stagger damage in this radius by 20%, which is what we want to focus on. In fact, second piece of the build is the Petrified Maul, which is a boss weapon that you can craft after you break the Ant legs, one of the 2 world boss in the first world, Earth. And this is gonna be your primary weapon for the builds, not because of its damage, although it's quite high, 110 damage at +6 only, but because of this mod. There is heavy impact. It has a 35% chance to inflict an additional 100% stagger damage with each hit. And every single one of your charge attacks with this weapon will have 100% chance to inflict the 100% bonus stagger damage. Because of this effect, every single one of your hits, provided it's a charge attack, will stagger pretty much anything in the game. Large elite enemies and bigger bosses might take a couple of hits instead of just one, but everything will sooner or later get stagger. And after that initial stagger, you will basically be able to keep them staggered until they die. Now for the trinkets, I run the Twisted Idol because it boosts your armor effectiveness by 25%, which is huge. My armor rating now is 329, with each piece of my armor set at +12. Without the idol, it's gonna be 263. So you can definitely see there the massive improvement of almost 70 points. For the ring, Leech Ember is a must, because in order to be able to tank it, you need to be able to regenerate HP as much as you can while you're meleeing your enemies. And this is a key ring for the builds. Like, if you take this off, the build becomes pretty much useless. I mean, you will still be able to get hits and stagger your enemies, but you will have to use your Dragon Art for healing yourself, which in the middle of a fight can be quite difficult, and of course it will force you to interrupt the stunlock chain in order to heal you. Plus, when you're swarmed by like thousands of enemies, like in every single boss fight in this game, being able to not stop and just keep going without healing because you heal by killing the stuff that comes at you, it's a big plus. Second ring, I use the Gravity Stone. Now, this is my choice. You could swap this for something else if you really like. This increases the damage by 20% when there are at least 2 enemies within 10 meters of the wearer. So if there are 2 enemies close to you in 10 meters range, you will have 20% more damage output with every weapon. But if you prefer, you could, I guess, use the Stone of Balance. Now, the reason I go with the Gravity Stone is because with this build, you're gonna be in the middle of the fight all the time, and there's gonna be pretty much zero occasion, like 99% of the times, you're gonna have 2 or more enemies around you. Plus, it's great for boss battles, because you will get swarmed by adds, and this is just a flat 20% more bonus damage. And the more damage you do, the more you will heal with the Lich Ember Ring. They just work too good in conjunction to choose something else, in my opinion, of course. Like, if you want to go for something else, be my guest. Now, this could be very much the end of the build for most of the enemies in the game, but in order to add even more survivability to this build, I added the hunting pistol, which is pretty much the best endgun in the game at the moment, with Mantle of Thorns, which is the first mod you will get from the first boss if you find Gorefist. Now, this mod is exceptionally good with this build because it reduces melee damage taken from enemies and reflects also that damage back to them. My values are 21% damage reduction and 192% damage reflection. However, these values will go up the further you upgrade your weapon. And it lasts 60 seconds. This is a very good mod. However, you need to be aware of the fact that Mantle of Thorns damage reflection won't heal you. So if an enemy hits you, most of the times it will get Stagger because the damage will be reflected to them, but you won't get the healing power from that. On the long gun slot, I use the shotgun. The reason I use the shotgun is because it's a very high damaging weapon at short range, and it will benefit a lot from the Scrapper Armor damage boost and the Gravity Stone. On the shotgun, we have the Flicker Clock mode. This is another amazing mod for this kind of build. It surrounds the caster with a magical shield, absorbing up to 120% of their max health as damage. Of course, again, this will go up with your weapon upgrade. And it will prevent from getting staggered. So, not only you have Mantle of Thorns that will prevent to get you staggered, but also Flicker Cloak. So if you have both of them running at the same time, you won't be able to get staggered in any shape or form. You will just keep going relentlessly until whatever is in front of you will die. Now, the only negative side of this build is the medium weight that will put your character in mid-roll. So you're gonna have less iframes when you're rolling away from the danger, and this is not an immortal build, so you will need to dodge stuff until you manage to actually stun-lock your enemies. From that point on, you can just keep going. Now, my character is rank 457, but for this specific build you need around 200 points, plus something of your choice if you want to max out as well. Things to prioritize in early game, of course, Vigor and Endurance. As soon as you can max out those, better it is. Mother's Blessing, a must is of course Warrior, because it will increase your primary source of damage output, which is melee damage. So, very important again. Now, I do max out Keeper's Blessing here, but this is optional. There's not much elemental damage in regular areas. Most of the elemental damage comes from specific bosses in the game, so you don't really need this that much to go through the game in general. Spirit is another one that, yes, it's very useful, but you can also overlook it at the beginning of the game. You can bring it to 10 and then spend the rest of the points elsewhere. For late game, we have Triage. This will basically double the effects of your Lich Ember Ring, basically healing you the double of you would normally do for each hit you land on an enemy, so this is a must. Arcane Strike. This will help you charge your mods with your melee attacks, so you don't have to necessarily use the guns, you can just melee everything and you will have the mods up and running. Everything related to crit damage, because if you crit you do more damage, and if you do more damage, not only things will die quicker, but also you will be able to heal more. So everything related to that, like Executioner, Kingslayer, Exploiter, those are must. And of course Guardian Blessing, because you're gonna be in the middle of the fight at all time, meleeing things over and over, so you want to be able to resist incoming hits from your enemies. Now we're gonna test the builds against 3 boss battles. We're gonna go against the Harrow, which is the most aggressive boss fight in the game. Its attacks are relentless, and once it starts, it gives you very little room to breathe. Second is gonna be the King Color, to show how the builds will deal with the massive amount of ads a boss can have, all together at the same time, while focusing on the boss and smashing it to the ground. And last, we're gonna go against the Ravager, that will give you the chance to see how this build works against more agile bosses that will try to keep you at distance. Now, everything here on the video is recorded on hard difficulty with equipment rating versus zone neutral, so we are in pair with the zone. These builds can be used also in Nightmare mode. I tried it myself and I was surprised on how effective it actually is. You go through the zones pretty easily, even through dungeons, pretty easily. You don't die too much, and if you are wise on the use of your mods, you can manage to deal with pretty much every situation. The only problem is when you fight bosses. Although he's still capable of delivering damage and staggering bosses, you will see on the long run the lack of damage output, and there are definitely better builds for Nightmare mode. But it's still a very fun build to use if you like to play normal or hard, and it will provide a different approach to the game that personally I couldn't believe it was possible. Also, I leave at the very end a boss fight against the Scourge in Nightmare mode, and I chose that boss not because it's full of ads, but because he's very difficult to deal with for a melee character, because he does a lot of AoE damage and radiation damage build up, which will lead you to lose half of your stamina if you get irradiated. But I still managed to defeat it. Thank you very much for watching. If you did, leave a like down below if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more, because they are coming. What do you think about these builds? Did you use some other melee builds already? Let me know how you get along with it in the comment section below. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Ocan's out.